other than his own son Christian King Combs, whom Diddy had supported throughout his entire career. So what exactly happened in court? What did Diddy's son reveal? Let's find out in today's video. 1. Shocking allegations. The trial of Sean Diddy Combs officially began on May 12, 2025, at the Manhattan Federal Court. This wasn't just a standard criminal trial. It was considered one of the most far-reaching cases in the American entertainment industry in the past decade. From the very start, it drew intense global media attention as the defendant was not only a powerful man but a cultural icon of hip-hop, a mogul who had created dozens of platinum-selling artists and once controlled billions in brand value. But this time, Diddy wasn't facing a media interview. He was facing serious federal criminal charges. Most notably, one of the charges was under the RICO Act, a law typically used to dismantle structured criminal organizations. He was also accused of enticing and transporting individuals across state lines for activities related to commercial sexual conduct, and coercing others into participating in depraved acts in unsafe environments. According to documents from the prosecution, between 2004 and 2024, Diddy allegedly orchestrated a closed network with himself at the top that organized debauched parties under the guise of social events attended by artists, models, and even underage individuals. These events, referred to with a euphemistic slang term freak-off, were exclusive elite gatherings marked by moral and legal transgressions, often involving drugs, enforced submission, and the exploitation of participants' bodies. Many of these activities allegedly took place at Diddy's luxury properties, his mansion in Los Angeles, a high-end apartment in New York, and rented international yachts. Victims testified that they were not only offered alcohol but were also given drinks suspected of being laced with substances impairing judgment and self-control. Once intoxicated, they were drawn into disturbing situations. Some were filmed, threatened, or coerced into fulfilling sexual demands from guests or even Diddy himself. One of the prosecution's key witnesses was Cassie Ventura, Diddy's longtime girlfriend. She described a toxic relationship spanning many years, during which she was allegedly forced into sexually exploitative encounters with strangers, often under Diddy's supervision or at his demand. Another witness, Daniel Phillips, testified that he had been paid to intimately engage with Cassie at one such party while Diddy observed and directed the interaction. Prosecutors argue that these testimonies reveal a clear pattern of manipulation and organized exploitation, far beyond mere personal misconduct. As of the trial's opening day, over 63 civil lawsuits had been filed against Diddy, a staggering number. These ranged from physical assault, intimidation, and psychological manipulation to coerced participation in lewd acts. What stunned many observers was the time span of the alleged incidents, stretching from 1991 to as recently as 2023, reflecting a deeply entrenched system of abuse hidden behind the glamour of fame and wealth. A major turning point came in March 2024, when law enforcement executed simultaneous raids on two of Diddy's major residences in Miami and Los Angeles. Authorities seized over 100 electronic devices, unregistered firearms, synthetic drugs, and notably more than 1,000 bottles of lubricant, potential evidence of routine and systematic sexual exploitation within his controlled environments. Companies founded and operated by Diddy, including Bad Boy Records, Revolt TV, Sean John, and Combs Enterprises, also came under investigation, suspected of serving as legal fronts to support illicit activities. Former federal prosecutor Nyama Ramoni remarked, "This is a textbook example of a single-defendant RICO case, where one individual uses business enterprises to legitimize sophisticated, networked criminal behavior backed by protection and strategic concealment." An even bigger question emerged when the list of witnesses and potential persons of interest was released during jury selection. Over 190 names, including notable celebrities like Kanye West, Michael B. Jordan, Kid Cudi, and Lauren London. While none of them had been criminally charged, their presence on the list underscored the vast scope of Diddy's connections and influence, perhaps shedding light on why these allegations remained buried for so many years. However, the most explosive twist didn't come from the prosecutors or forensic evidence. It came from the man once considered Diddy's heir, Christian King Combs. Raised as the successor to Diddy's empire, Christian's testimony and public statements sent shockwaves through the media. His words were not only emotionally powerful but are believed to have directly triggered Diddy's courtroom heart attack, sparking a domino effect of legal and psychological consequences. The father collapsed in court. And from that moment, a profound question began to surface. Is the truth finally rising from within the very heart of the Combs family, where silence had been the only rule for so many years? 2. A family in the eye of the storm. As Diddy's trial began, the first images captured by the media revealed a scene few expected. Diddy's children seated in the front row of the courtroom, silent and seemingly resolute. Christian, Justin, Quincy, Chance, Jesse, and Delilah all were present with solemn expressions and unwavering gazes fixed on their father. They appeared to be a united front, a family standing together in the face of adversity, an image of solidarity that seemed unshakable. But that image existed only on the surface. Behind the scenes, the actions and personal choices of Diddy's children painted a very different picture. Not long after the initial court sessions ended each day, Christian Combs was spotted partying in Los Angeles, arm in arm with his girlfriend, posting celebratory photos filled with wine, neon lights, and nightlife vibes across social media. Similar behavior was noted with Justin and Quincy, who were seen attending a side event alongside young Miami, Diddy's current partner, while their father faced the looming threat of a life sentence. This raised a glaring question. If your father is facing federal charges and the possibility of spending the rest of his life behind bars, is partying and celebrating an appropriate response? For most people, the answer would be obvious: no. But for Diddy's children, it seemed the rules were different. Their reactions reflected a deeply troubling form of emotional detachment, one that raised both moral and psychological concerns. Either they had become so accustomed to their father's dark secrets that they no longer saw them as abnormal, or they simply viewed the situation as a power game where wealth and fame could bend the rules of justice. But reality has proven otherwise. U.S. federal law does not show leniency to celebrities, especially in cases involving organized misconduct or abuse of influence. The public display of luxury and indulgence by Diddy's children amid this legal storm not only drew public outrage but also damaged their own reputations, especially Christian, who has been trying to launch a solo career under the stage name King Combs and escape his father's shadow. At a deeper level, fractures within the Combs family began surfacing more clearly after Christian publicly commented on the trial, delivering the controversial statement, "They didn't say anything important in court." The remark shocked many, not only for its apparent disregard for justice but because it came from the very person once expected to uphold and continue Diddy's legacy. From that point forward, the public began reinterpreting the family not as a close-knit unit, but as a corporate enterprise operating under PR strategy, where each individual played a role, but genuine emotional connection seemed absent. Some pop culture analysts even drew comparisons. The Combs family is like the Roys in Succession, united on the outside, but internally fractured, manipulative, and devoid of trust. Indeed, if one looks closely, the presence of Diddy's children in court seemed more like a strategic media move than a heartfelt show of support. They weren't there to dispute the charges. They were there to project an image of a perfect family as a temporary media shield while Diddy's empire crumbled piece by piece. But that image didn't last, as victim testimonies from Cassie Ventura, Dawn Richard, and Daniel Phillips surfaced, describing explicit physical abuse, coercion through power, and the use of substances to blur the lines of consent. Public demand grew louder for accountability, not only from Diddy, but also from those around him. Those who attended the parties. Those who benefited from the lifestyle. And among them, Diddy's sons, especially Christian, could no longer avoid scrutiny. It's hard to believe that those who lived under the same roof as Diddy for over 2 decades knew nothing. From mansions to yachts, recording studios to backstage lounges, these were the very spaces where immoral and illegal activities allegedly took place. The prolonged silence of his children could no longer be explained as ignorance. It became clear that it was a deliberate choice. And when Christian finally turned, through testimony or public statement interpreted as a betrayal, the illusion of a unified family shattered completely. Diddy's heart attack in court, following the words of his closest son, became a haunting symbol. Power might help you hide the truth from the world. But it cannot protect you from collapse when the fall begins inside your own home. As more women began to come forward, the pattern of allegations became disturbingly familiar. Accounts shared harrowing details of sexual coercion, non-consensual acts, physical abuse, and psychological manipulation. These were not random occurrences but, according to the plaintiffs, carefully orchestrated scenarios designed to exploit, dominate, and silence. The lawsuits painted Diddy not merely as a music mogul with a temper, but as a man who created and presided over an empire fueled by fear, loyalty enforced through brutality, and indulgences that blurred all lines of morality. Many of the incidents described occurred in hotel suites, lavish residences, and private yachts, settings meant to convey power and exclusivity, but which allegedly became scenes of trauma and coercion. Christian King Combs, Diddy's son, also became entangled in the fallout. Although not the central figure in most legal actions, reports suggested his name had surfaced in documents as someone allegedly present during certain questionable events. It was never clearly established whether Christian was a passive witness or if his presence implicated him in any wrongdoing. His career as a rising rapper and fashion influencer quickly dimmed under the cloud of association with his father's burgeoning scandal. Public sympathy for him was divided. Some saw him as a young man caught in the gravity of his father's sins, while others questioned the extent of his knowledge and involvement. Media outlets, social media users, and commentators were relentless in dissecting every angle. Documentaries were hastily pitched. Think pieces flooded major publications. Was this the reckoning hip-hop had long avoided? Had Diddy simply become another example of a powerful man insulated by wealth and surrounded by enablers, whose house of cards was finally collapsing? Some former associates stepped forward, adding layers to the narrative. Former bad boy artists and employees described a culture of silence and control. Allegedly, NDAs were handed out like candy, threats were both overt and implied, and anyone who raised concerns about Diddy's behavior quickly found themselves exiled from the industry. There were whispers of blackmail, of payoffs to victims, and of surveillance that extended beyond private security into what some described as personal intelligence operations. The legal system began catching up with the flood of claims. Federal authorities quietly opened inquiries, and New York prosecutors reviewed claims for criminal viability. Though civil suits carried the weight of personal testimony, the hope for many victims was criminal accountability. Surveillance footage from raids and seized documents began to be scrutinized, cross-checked against accuser statements. What investigators were searching for was not only proof of specific acts but a pattern, a systemic abuse of power tied to criminal enterprise. If prosecutors could tie Diddy's alleged actions to human trafficking statutes, it would mean a dramatically higher threshold of consequences. Meanwhile, Diddy's empire showed signs of implosion. Partnerships with luxury brands, beverage companies, and media platforms were abruptly suspended or terminated. Revolt TV, which he had once touted as a platform for black voices and creativity, faced internal chaos. Staff members walked out, investors grew jittery, and advertisers distanced themselves. Ciroc, the vodka brand with which Diddy had long been synonymous, initiated a public separation from the mogul. Former collaborators in music, including some who had defended Diddy in the past, went quiet or subtly denounced him. Those who had once praised his business acumen and hustle now weighed their legacy against their silence. The court proceedings were grueling and complex. Diddy's legal team, bolstered by some of the most expensive attorneys in the country, fought aggressively to dismiss or delay lawsuits. They argued inconsistencies in victim testimonies, lack of hard evidence, and media bias. Yet, judges increasingly rejected these motions, allowing the cases to proceed. The judiciary, perhaps responding to growing public awareness of how trauma affects memory and reporting, gave plaintiffs the benefit of thorough hearings. Forensic experts, psychologists, and digital analysts were brought into the fray. Encrypted messages, deleted files, and cloud backups were recovered and examined. Some court filings hinted at videos, audio recordings, and confidential correspondences that might substantiate accusers' claims. The defense countered with allegations of extortion, fame-seeking, and vendettas. It became a legal war as much as a cultural reckoning. Outside the courtroom, a movement was building. Protesters gathered with signs reading "Protect Black Women" and "Hip-Hop's #MeToo is here." Survivors of other music industry abuses lent their voices in solidarity. Civil rights attorneys and feminist activists held press conferences, demanding not just justice in Diddy's case, but structural reform within an industry that too often normalized predatory behavior. The music industry, long built on a mix of rebellion and hedonism, now faced questions about its complicity in. Amidst this, Christian Combs remained a figure of speculation. Would he speak out? Would he turn against his father? Or would he remain silent? Those close to him reported that he was deeply conflicted, caught between familial loyalty and a dawning awareness of the magnitude of the accusations. His social media presence dwindled. Brands began to distance themselves. His music career hit a standstill. Some close to him described him as a young man in crisis, trying to understand the life he inherited. The public began debating not just guilt or innocence, but the legacy of Sean Combs. Could the hits, "Mo Money Mo Problems," "I'll Be Missing You," "Bad Boy for Life," ever be separated from the man who created them? Would Diddy be remembered as a musical innovator or a cautionary tale? Cultural historians began re-examining the early 2000s era of hip-hop with a more critical lens. Behind the flashy music videos and chart-topping singles, had there been a dark network of power abuses going unnoticed or unreported? One particularly damning lawsuit involved multiple plaintiffs who claimed that Diddy operated what they described as a sex dungeon in one of his properties. The term was sensational, but the description was deeply disturbing: alleged physical restraint, coercion, and the systematic breaking of victims' wills. The defense denied these claims, calling them grotesque fabrications, but the emotional testimony of the plaintiff swayed public opinion. Even those who had remained neutral began to question the depths of the alleged depravity. As the legal machine moved forward, rumors swirled of possible plea deals, financial settlements, and even a potential federal RICO case. If prosecutors could prove that Diddy's actions formed part of an organized, criminal enterprise that included trafficking, coercion, and obstruction of justice, he could face decades behind bars. Unlike civil suits, which Diddy could settle with money, a federal indictment would represent a level of legal peril he couldn't outspend. By the midpoint of 2025, the scandal had become one of the defining cultural and legal events of the decade. Media outlets compared it to the Harvey Weinstein saga, drawing parallels